All right, welcome back everybody. We've got another gun gripe, and today we're up in the classroom. This is gun gripe number 20, and this is going to be, for some of you, probably a little bit of a sensitive subject, but I think it's important for us to touch on. Now, you know, recently we took a business trip out to Waco, Texas.
Yes, we did.
The contents of that trip I'm not willing to divulge yet, but you'll find out at a later time why we went out there. And I can tell you, if any of you guys like this channel and you subscribe, it's going to be an awesome thing for you, and you're going to love it. So, what's today's gun gripe?
Well, while we were out there, the subject of the Branch Davidian siege came to mind, came up in the conversation. In fact, we were only 9 miles from the compound, where the compound used to be. But we were so busy we didn't have time to go out and check that out. But we got to talking about this, and we talked to a lot of Texans out there, and every one of them sympathized with the Davidians. Now, the federal siege took place in 1993, and everybody sympathized with the Davidians. Now, there was accusations that David Koresh, or Vernon Howell as he was known before that, was having sex with the children, he was polygamous, and all this kind of stuff going on. Family and Children's Services called on them repeatedly and found no violation. Now, they had Hellfire devices on their AR-15s, excuse me, and simulating full auto fire, and that was brought up too.
The ATF actually had accusations on the Branch Davidians that they had illegal full auto firearms in their possession. No such evidence was ever presented, and no such warrants were ever given to search the Davidian compound for full auto weapons.
That's correct.
The whole idea of the siege and taking the place over all that was based solely on speculation.
Speculation only. These people were separatists, and anytime you try to do something like that, just like in the Randy Weaver case, you come under government scrutiny.
That's correct.
And the sheriff of the town at that time said he could have went out and served the warrant that they had for David Koresh peacefully.
Well, yeah, I mean, the sheriff knew David Koresh personally, and he said that if they would have just let me take the warrant and serve it, I could have got Koresh to come quietly, we talk about it, figure everything out, and get to the bottom of it. But I just think the government, being the way they are about, you know, they just don't have any humility to it. It's like they don't want to solve it that way. They want to solve it in a manner that can basically kind of stretch to their needs and what they want to do. Their political gains.
They want to exercise their arbitrary power over civilians. Now that's what it's all about. Now the sheriff also said that David Koresh was in town almost every day. He said I could have got him on the sidewalk and said, "Come on, David, let's go have a cup of coffee and let's talk about this thing." And everything, none of this would have happened.
No, not at all.
But once the siege began, they were under siege for 50 days. The road was cordoned off. No civilians could go down there and see what was going on. Now, I've got some dates here that are very interesting.
Yeah, for a 5-mile radius, the place was cordoned off in the final days.
I've got some dates here that are kind of interesting. On April the 19th in 1775, the British troops clashed with the Minutemen at Lexington and Concord.
God bless America.
The first shot was fired on April the 19th. Okay, April 19th, 1943, the German stormtroopers stormed the Warsaw Ghetto. April the 19th, 93, federal raid on the bank. Coincidence? That's kind of one of those things that make you go,
And this April 19th was the 20th year anniversary of the Branch Davidian.
It's the 19th anniversary.
19th anniversary.
19th anniversary of the federal raid on the Branch Davidian compound.
Right.
Now, the siege lasted 50 days. 76 people died in a fire.
That the government said.
There were 24 British nationals, 20 children, and 2 pregnant women involved in this.
That's right.
Now, I'm an American, and I believe the government can do anything. I mean, they do this they try to give this arbitrary power over us. And just because they say something doesn't mean it's true. I'm not siding with either one. I was not at the Branch Davidian compound. No one to this day knows who fired the first shot. But what we enumerated a while ago, this could have been settled peacefully with no problem whatsoever. But I think the government made an example of the Davidians.
Yeah, and really the government, in our history, I mean, has always gotten to points where they're too big for their boots.
Well, yeah.
And that's what it amounts to. The Branch Davidian massacre, and you talk to people in Waco, they call it a massacre. They call it a murdering of citizens by the U.S. government.
Right.
And this has happened more than once. I mean, look at the Trail of Tears. Look at what they did to the Indians.
Right.
You know, they could have treated the Indians better, but what did they do? They marched them out there till their feet bled off, and they died along the way.
Right.
I mean, this has happened more than once. This is not a new thing.
No.
I mean, you could go into Ruby Ridge and all the things that happened at Ruby Ridge, but the bottom line, the point of this video, what we want to drive home, is that the government abuses its power, okay? They do it on a daily basis. They trample our Constitution. They trample your individual rights. They bastardize everything we stand for as Americans. And if we allow this to continue, stuff like the Davidian massacre will reoccur.
That's right.
You know, history repeats itself if the people that currently stand don't do something to change that history, to change the future. You know, and we can do that. And it starts by, you know, holding government officials accountable for their actions, holding departments accountable for their actions, and looking at things on a case-by-case basis.
One of the first things we have to vote for candidates who support the Constitution.
We have to nominate candidates that support the Constitution.
Right. Now, an interesting point, one of our young subscribers who's just 18 years old called me yesterday. He said, I love your videos, I'm a fan of y'all's, and blah, blah, blah. He never heard of the Branch Davidians.
Right.
And it only happened a year before he was born.
Right.
Now, they try to eradicate this stuff. They don't teach this stuff in the public school system.
No. Just like the public school system, you know, when they go to teach, let's just say the Revolutionary War,
right,
the Founding Fathers, even in today's, you know, standpoint. And I ask my kids, you know, Jacob's only 13, you know, I ask him all the time, what are they teaching in school? And they teach like bastardized, watered down versions of the truth.
Right.
It's half-truths.
Right.
You know, and, you know, history remembers the Founding Fathers as heroes, and they were. I mean, they're the greatest generation of Americans, the Founding Fathers, right, and probably ever will be. But in today's liberal society, you know, you have this whole thing, domestic terrorism and domestic terrorists and all this horse crap. And that's a term and terminology, methodology that's all just sort of thrown in the mixing pot with our, you know, our public school systems,
right,
to where they're damning those people.
And people like David Koresh's group and Randy Weaver and countless others, they are demonized for wanting to separate and live their own lives. This is how the whole country here got started. We wanted to separate from England.
Yeah, I mean, like Ned Kelly, for instance.
Right.
Same thing in Australia with Ned Kelly. I mean, he's considered a hero.
Yeah.
Even though in his day he was villainized, people hated it.
Right.
Sometimes, you know, time can sort of heal all of those things and make people realize, as time passes by, you know, you think, well, maybe his ideas weren't so bad after all. Now, maybe his methods might have been a little unorthodox.
Right.
But you can't deny the fact that, you know...
But what we do, this is not really a gun gripe, so to speak. This is something to give you food for thought and to think about the upcoming election. Now, if you remember back when the Supreme Court voted on whether or not the Second Amendment was actually a right, it only passed by one vote. It was 5-4. If one of those judges had voted the other way, and they ruled that the Second Amendment was not a right, then what are they going to do? What's going to be the next step?
Yeah, I mean, bear in mind that we have Supreme Court judges that are un-American enough to vote against the Constitution as your God-given fundamental right to self-protection, to standing up against the government. And see, they can water it down all they want, but the bottom line is that the Second Amendment gives you the right to protect yourself from a tyrannical government.
That's what it was designed for.
And when the Second Amendment was drafted, you hear all these people and they say, well, the Second Amendment doesn't talk about machine guns. Well, that's true. At the same time, when the Second Amendment was drafted, the populace had the same exact weaponry as the military. And that's what the foundation of it is based on. For the citizenry to be as armed and prepared as the military so that those checks and balances are kept in order. And that is what it's for. The Second Amendment has nothing to do with killing deer. It has nothing to do with shooting clay pigeons. And it has everything to do with protecting your fundamental rights to life and liberty. And that's the bottom line.
Well, now, in closing this video, I want to tell the people out there that everybody we met in Texas was wonderful. There are gun lovers out there. Now you go to California, someplace like that, they take their guns away from them. They won't get those Texans guns. It'll be an Alamo again.
It'll be a cold day in hell.
It'll be a cold
when
day
a free
in hell.
state is disarmed.
That is right.
And it's just not going to happen. There's too many red-blooded Americans out there, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but you know, all of us that love our freedom and love our country, it is our duty to defend that.
That is correct.
And I mean, it can be taken a lot of different ways, and I know society labels those methodologies and ways of thinking are labeled in different ways in society nowadays because of our liberal media and liberal public education system.
Right.
But the bottom line, at the end of the day, it is your duty to own a gun and have it for the purposes of defending your country. That's the bottom line. You know, with that being said, the Branch Davidians, did they deserve what happened to them?
No. No, they didn't. No one deserves that. No one deserves that.
No.
And remember this too, folks. The only thing you have to do to let evil take over is for good men to do nothing.
This is true. And if we do nothing in November, evil's just going to take over and keep on going. It's going to grow like a plague.
And I tell you what, people are buying guns now like there's no tomorrow.
Ammunition.
And there may not be one.
And people are buying guns that normally we would never see.
Normally would never buy a gun. I've got people coming in here every day. I never thought I'd own a gun, but I'm getting one.
That's right.
So I advise everybody to do the same thing.
So Waco, Texas, Branch Davidian massacre.
Right.
It's a massacre.
It is. It's a shame of Waco.
Well, hopefully this gun gripe opened up your eyes and sort of, you know, this is number 20. We're going to keep these gripes going. We've really enjoyed doing these, and we're glad that people have been, you know, open to our ideas and listen to what we have to say. We're glad we have an audience that we can pitch this stuff to that actually listen. So as long as you guys like them and you want more of them, me and Barry will keep doing them.
All right.